Welcome to the Steve Marchand podcast. Really happy to have my friend and a real leader in the state of New Hampshire, Rich Gulla, here today. Rich, thanks for taking some time today.
Thanks for coming in. I'm glad to be here.
We are here at the State Employees Association offices. This is our studio of the day, and it's a real pleasure. And several weeks ago, we got together, a group of us here in your offices in Concord, and had an awesome conversation. And by the end of it, it's like, you know what? We should be talking about these things and recording it. As I think, especially on my side of the aisle, a lot of Democrats, I think, need to hear about the central role labor has played, needs to play, should be playing going forward in the country, and certainly in the Democratic Party. And we'll get into all that. But first, Rich, tell me about yourself some more for folks that maybe don't know a lot about you, maybe don't know a lot about the State Employees Association.
Okay, sure. So we just celebrated our 85th year. So we've been an association for 85 years. We affiliated with SEIU, Service Employees International Union, back in 1984. So we're an affiliate. So we're a separate standing entity, but affiliated with the International Union. We're a member-led organization. We represent roughly 11,000 employees, state, county, and municipal, and recently organized the first private sector hospital here in New Hampshire, where many have tried and failed. The Concord Hospital nurses voted to form a union in Laconia and Franklin. That's something that we're very proud of them, have a voice at the table. And so I've been in this office. I'm starting my 12th year. I was elected in 2014. The person who suggested I run for office, that person I'd like to take out back sometimes and have a conversation with.
Yeah.
No, I enjoy helping people. By trade, I'm a liquor employee, manage liquor stores.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I did 5 years as part-time law enforcement, and I play drums. I'm a drummer. I play music, and I like to snowmobile. And I got 2 golden retrievers. I love to walk them, and that helps keep me sane. So I often say whether if I'm banging those drums and I'm pissed off, nobody knows it, or if I'm enjoying myself, nobody knows it.
It looks the same to the rest of us.
Exactly.
It sounds the same, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when did you first join the union?
About 6 months after I was hired in 1998.
Okay. So talk through, there's like a 15 plus year time where you join the union, and 15 years later, sprawling membership, 11,000 people, you become president, you get elected president. What was that? How does that happen in that 15 years or so? Probably not what you expected when you first started.
No, I never, ever pictured doing a job like this. That was not on the radar at all. If you were to say I was going to grow up and be a president of a labor organization, I'm like, what the hell's a labor organization? So there were some changes in the work environment, and I became a steward. And I got active that way, and I ran for the board. Someone suggested I run for the board, and I was elected. And then someone suggested I did about 2 years on the board when I ran for president, and here I am.
In the 10 plus years, about 11 years you've been president, maybe start with the organization itself and the membership. How has the membership evolved in those 10 or 11 years? Maybe in the political affiliation or the priority of issues. What are the things that, if you look back 11 years ago, would have been the top priorities for your membership? And are they pretty similar to what they would be if you asked folks today?
I think so. I mean, our basic function is to negotiate good wages, health benefits, keeping good health benefits, retirement. And we don't just represent state employees. We represent county, municipal employees, private sector as well. So there's a wide plethora of employees. Even within state government, there's electricians and doctors and nurses. So, yeah, I think obviously there's been political change. I think with COVID, there's been a huge change since COVID. We're definitely more remote now, more hybrid. I think we're doing more with less. We have less employees. Our workforce is really stretched to the max. especially with the current funding crisis. There's a hiring freeze. The government shutdown with the threat of potential furloughs for federally funded employees. So those are things that are really on my mind right now. But and I think over the years we have definitely pivoted and taken a much more bipartisan approach.
Yep.
And part of that has been truly out of necessity. Unfortunately, at the state level, the Democrats have not been able to, a couple of times they've gotten the House or the Senate, but they haven't been able to keep the corner office. And there are moderate Republicans out there that are labor friendly, and quite honestly, they're courting us somewhat more than the Democrats have been. I hate to say it, but I feel like we've been taken for granted.
Well, it's hard to deny. I mean, and I think this became more of a national spotlight issue, certainly in the 24 presidential election, right? I mean, the Republican National Committee, the convention, Sean O'Brien, right, speaking at it at a very prominent time slot during the convention, and even if he was not in total agreement or total alignment with the Republican Party, and I don't think he ever said he was completely in alignment, just the presence was it a massive statement. And given that this was literally a few days after the attempted assassination in Pennsylvania, it still found a way to break through in the news cycle despite sensational headlines and news, crazy times, which tells you how big a deal it was. But that wasn't the first moment, right? I mean, this has been brewing for a little while. And as you say, at the state level, some of it is, not having any of the power. Democrats are in a position where you have to work with the folks who are making the decisions, right?
Yeah. And it was either 2 or 3 years ago, to your point, the vice chair of the Republican Party had reached out, and I was asked to speak at the Young Republicans a fall fundraising event, and I went there and talked to them. And recently, I was asked to speak with the Young Democrats, so finally they reached out.
Okay, all right.
So I'll talk to anybody about paper,
of course.
And so it was just interesting. And I also think the other thing of note, and I don't know if people watching this realize, but the Republicans also removed right to work from their party platform. So that is no longer on the Republican platform.
Which has been this real priority that never's gotten through in New Hampshire, but doesn't stop them from trying every cycle, right?
Yeah, it's over 35 times they've tried to do it. Yeah.
It is. And they tried, I believe that there was an effort last year.
It was.
And it's always had the bipartisan, at the end of the day, virtually all Democrats, but a significant number, enough Republicans to prevent it from ever getting to a governor's desk.
Correct.
Now, Governor Sununu, who was there for 8 years, my recollection is he wanted it on his desk, right?
Yeah.
He was asking for it.
Yeah.
Get it to my desk. I don't get quite the same intensity with Governor Ayotte for prioritizing, get that thing on my desk, the way that Sununu would actually campaign on it. I don't know if that's a prioritization or a style thing.
When she was campaigning, it was something we also did differently this past election cycles. We endorsed in both primaries,
right?
Because prior to the November election, about a third of our membership was Republican, Democrat, and Independent. That has since changed. There are more independents now than Republicans and Democrats. But we had worked with our Republican members over the years. They felt like they really didn't have a voice here, so we wanted them to have that voice. So why not give them options in their primaries for candidates that we felt that would best suit, our labor's interest? That being said, so we interviewed both Chuck Morse and Kelly Ayotte, as well as Cindy Warmington and Joyce Craig. We endorsed Cindy on the Democratic side, and we endorsed Kelly on the Republican side. And at the time, she was asked that pointed question when she came into our board meeting, and she said, "Look, if it comes to my desk, I'll sign it. But if you go to my website, you're not going to see it prominently there. You're not going to see it at all. It's not a priority for me." And I can confidently say, as governor, we have a very collaborative and working relationship with the current administration. Um, and that's all I can really ask for, is to have a seat at the table to express employees' concerns and comments. And I am pleasantly surprised it's a two-way street. She's reached out to me and asked me to come in and give advice and counsel on certain matters. And that's the way it should work. We're not going to agree on everything all the time. No one is, right? I'm married. You can ask my wife. She'll tell you.
How long you been married?
3 years. No.
It like I'll be like I don't know what my wife and I were thinking. So well no that came out wrong. I'm very sure I know what we were thinking. We love each other, but our 25th wedding anniversary is Election Day 2026. So even though we both have always enjoyed politics, I work in it obviously now. We got married on November 3rd, 2001. And some of it was because, I mean, it's anybody who's trying to rent a hall out or something for a wedding, you got to plan that stuff out way in advance. And we didn't quite realize that. So we pushed it probably a little later that year than we would have. So November 3rd. And beautiful day. It's like a summer, 70-degree day in Portsmouth. And but now every couple of election years, it falls on our anniversary because, it's going to be the Tuesday in November. And our 25th, a big one, on Election Day 2026. So it's funny, I work with local Democratic committees on messaging. And somebody the other day said, "Hey, when's the election next year?" And the person I was working with says November 3rd, 2026. So the synapses go off of like, oh crap, that's the 25th wedding anniversary. And so suddenly I'm asking all of the veteran married couples in the room. They're there for political messaging for me. I needed marital messaging from them for how I'm going to deal with the 25th on the anniversary. And we'll do it. But you're right. Like whether you've been married forever or you're a governor working with a union president, I mean, it's not that different in terms it's a people business, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And we're all in this together. I mean, we all, we dedicate our lives to public service, and we want to do the best that we can for our fellow citizens, and we're stakeholders, right? We're taxpayers and stakeholders in this. So we have a vested interest to try to do the job the most efficient, professional.
So now, as a lifelong Democrat who is concerned, I mean, you alluded to it. It's been certainly at the state level here in New Hampshire. We've been in the wilderness, so to speak. 2018, we got back some stuff down ballot, the House and Senate. Haven't had the governorship since winning in 2014. It's been a while. And it has impact in terms of the activist base looking for what should our coalition be. And I'm finding in a lot of my conversations out on the road with groups of activists, labor, which has been historically the central partner in building coalitions, political coalitions and policy coalitions, like how do we make life better? It feel like we're at a more uncertain place, the activist bases, because of all the national and all that. So let's say you're talking to Democrats like me. What do we need to be doing better to rebuild that connection with, broadly speaking, labor or SEA, if you want to get more particular, to get back to the place where I feel like historically we have been and we really want and need to be again?
So, in some regards, I feel like we've been taken for granted by the I'll just be brutally honest. It felt like we were an open checkbook, and we would constantly give money, and we would get some talk and not a lot of action. I think this most recent election cycle, the Democrats really missed on the messaging. People were concerned about the price of eggs before the November election. Our housing costs here in New Hampshire are through the roof. Our energy costs, childcare, healthcare, the bread and butter issues. And while the Republicans didn't go into detail on how they were going to attack that, they acknowledged what was on everyone's mind. And the Democrats did an excellent job of talking to their 30% base that he's bad, he's horrible, but never really talked about what they were going to fix. And that's a problem.
Now, I saw a quote from you after the election. I believe it was around, or was it maybe the general election time, where a reporter, on this vein of sort of the shifting coalitions in American politics, had perhaps oversimplified it. I think is how you kind of gently corrected them, as making this like a blue collar versus white collar, and the blue collar are now Republican and the white collar are Democrat, and that's sort of the beginning and end of it. And you had said it's a little more nuanced than that. And let's say even within your union, you've got the full range of socioeconomic backgrounds, right?
Yeah, I do.
And so you have this, what is the composition now of your membership, and how is that adjusted, in terms of whether you want to say registration, party registration, or sometimes, it's a little different, party registration versus self-identification, right? There's some folks that are registered Democrat but feel that they've moved Republican or vice versa. What's the membership look like these days compared to pick a time in the past?
So I'll pick the November election. At the November election, we were pretty much evenly divided, a third each, between independents, Republicans, and Democrats.
Sure.
Since then, we have more registered Republicans than we have registered Democrats, and we have the most are independent. I think the largest group of our members are now independent. I think they're, in a lot of ways, they're fed up with both parties.
Well, that's interesting. So one of the things that I'll hear back from Democrats, as it relates, especially to unions, is, okay, maybe Democrats have, I buy your premise about taking you for granted, taking unions even more broadly for granted as a party. But Democrats will say, hey, the Republicans are maybe saying, are more welcoming in their language and in opportunities than they have been in the past, but the policies are not that helpful, or they're not yet showing, matching the rhetoric. What do you say to that Democratic critique when they kind of push back a little?
So what I would say to that is, just like in the Democratic Party right now, there is a tug of war going on. There's one going on in the Republican Party. You've got a younger generation of Republicans coming up that understand the value of labor, understand and talk about sectoral bargaining, for example, which is something my international union is very interested in. And you've got the old school, like right-to-work Democrats that are resisting that.
Or Republicans.
Republicans. Yeah, sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, old school Republicans that are resisting that. So that's what's happening there. And I think as they age out, you're going to see more of this change.
Are you seeing that at the state level? We have this for folks that aren't New Hampshire centric. It's not a typo. We have 400 state reps. It's one of the largest legislative bodies in the entire world, and the largest state one by a fair amount among the 50 states, which creates, the good news is it's probably the easiest state in the country to get into elected office if you really want it badly, especially if you're a Republican in a red district or a Democrat in a blue district, and you really want to be a state rep. The opportunities to do so are likely there, but but there's just so many, right? And it could be difficult to stand out and looking for trend lines. So it's hard for young people to be a legislator because the other thing you might not know, it pays $100 a year. That's also not a typo. More members than dollars a year that you get paid. And the work has become bigger. I mean, 40 years ago, the second year of the legislative session, they didn't have a formal gathering. They did not formally have a second year because it was volunteer. They're like, who would do that? And now the second year has become pretty intense too. You could have 1,000 bills.
1,300.
Yeah, that's like the second year. 40 years ago, didn't have any. So it's becoming, and then campaigning has become more expensive, more time intensive. That's becoming a job. So it's become more and more of a real time commitment. And if you want folks to take it seriously, but still paying them $100 a year last time I checked. So, um, do you find in that at the state level, the Republican, particularly in the House, the Senate's only 24. It's actually quite small. I see there are some kind of young guns in the Republican caucus who appear to be quickly bubbling up into leadership positions. And are they? Do you find that the younger voices in the GOP are they increasingly kind of taking over that conversation, that generational shift that you described a moment ago?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of dynamics going on. Number one, about 2 years ago, the chair of the Republican Party reached out to me and informed me that he was going to make an announcement shortly before Labor Day that they were forming a labor caucus with some House representative and Senate members, and they were also going to start attending the Labor Day breakfast that the AFL-CIO hosts every year, and they've been attending that each year since, and they've been bringing a larger delegation, and they have engaged with us. They passed a resolution at their convention last year embracing labor and labor unions. So that's interesting. And to your point, yes, I think some of the younger ones are definitely more labor centric and union centric. What the interesting dynamic, and I think we need to talk about this a bit, is the Free State Project.
Yeah. Yes.
So I don't like referring to them as Republicans because I can talk and work with a true Republican. I can talk and work with a Democrat. Those Free Staters, they're a clear and present danger to our way of life in this state. And they are raising havoc, and they have a large enough of a block that they're politically influencing that party. And
Well, the
if
majority,
anything, they can bring the parties together. I think
Yes.
those Free Staters should be bringing the Democrats and Republicans together.
And it is remarkable. I mean, for folks that are watching that haven't heard it, I'm glad Richard brought this up. Free Staters 22-ish years ago said we're going to pick a state and that we think will be friendliest to this quite libertarian philosophy, really anti-government, all the way down to local level. And they got down to a handful of states that had a more of a libertarian spirit. So like I think Idaho and Montana were two of the finalists, and New Hampshire. I mean, the plate says live free or die. So they decide New Hampshire, and purely from a political, because I couldn't agree more with you on the existential threat that they pose. They picked the correct state to try to max out influence the fastest, because we have 400 seats in the legislature, 203 districts, 400 seats. Even though it's costing more to run for office, it's still much cheaper to become a state rep here than pretty much any state in the country. In most of these districts, if you raise $5,000, you could probably get the resources you need, particularly if it's a district that lines up with your party affiliation, and the Free Staters have been doing this and have been joined by others that may not literally be Free Staters, as in they didn't move from Ohio. Like the majority leader is Jason Osborne. He moved from Defiance, Ohio, pun intended, boom, 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 and came to New Hampshire, part of the movement, and kind of plugged away. And now he's the majority leader in a dominant position. He has dozens of other people in the legislature who fit that profile, but also enabled by others that maybe did not move here for the Free State, but have adopted it, that are separating out from Republican Classic or whatever you want to call them.
I guess Republican Classic.
Right? I don't know. And it is almost like three parties going on here. And luckily, it seems like on some labor issues, there have been opportunities, like right to work has been able to get killed with the two of the three more conventional getting together and saying, this is not New Hampshire. But that Free State threat is getting bigger. I don't think it's getting smaller. I think it's becoming a more and more dominant element of the New Hampshire Republican Party.
Have you ever gone to their website?
I have.
I was horrified at how organized they are. They will show up with a moving party when you come to New Hampshire. They will aid you in renting a house or buying a home. Yeah, no, they have social gatherings. They are extremely organized, and we probably all could learn some lessons from them, unfortunately.
I mean, I teach a class at UNH. I teach a grad course, and we spend time. It's about a lot of it's campaign development. How do you take a good idea? These are public policy folks, so they take all this time to learn policy, and I think a lot of them realize, well, how would I actually get the support I need to implement it? Otherwise, it's academic. How do you turn it into the real world? And so we do some campaign, and I make a point. I'm like, whether you are center, left, or right, or apolitical, the reality is there are campaign tactics you have to learn, and a lot of the best strategies and tactics are from folks you couldn't agree less with. And so for some of my students who are more to the left, I tell them, I'm like, look, we could talk about how Roe v. Wade got overturned, and you could be irate about that decision, but that shouldn't stop you from learning the very effective strategies that went into building this national network, the legal, the political, the financial, the media, that allowed that to happen. The NRA has been as successful as any political organization, pound for pound, in the country over the last 75 years, with a fraction of the budget of much larger organizations to the right, the center, the left. Powerful lessons to learn. And of course, the same with some organizations all across the spectrum. And I think you're right. I think the free staters, there's a lot that we all in politics should learn about effective use of sometimes pretty limited resources,
Sure.
targeted in the right places that have had outsized impact on New Hampshire policy. I mean, they're in a commanding position on education and the change in education policy in a way that I think even a decade ago, I bet even some of the early free state leaders in the state would not have imagined that they would be as far down the road on the policy changes as they've ended up being. That's and you correct me. I do get the sense in the labor movement that there are certain corners of labor where the GOP is more comfortable in the ways you're describing, building the relationship, and some other corners where it doesn't seem like they're too comfortable.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love my sisters and brothers at the education, NEA and AFT, but they're definitely there's some space there between those labor organizations and the Republican Party.
It really feels that way nationally and here in New Hampshire.
It does, and I think the other thing that I would share is that when we talk about how things have changed, some union members that I know that, for example, supported Bernie Sanders in his bid for president,
Yeah.
also voted for Trump because their messaging was not that dissimilar. They were talking about, again, housing, the cost of eggs, healthcare, things that, the bread and butter items. So it's just noteworthy of how that their messaging resonated.
I've got family members, lots of good friends who are exactly that pattern. Bernie 2016, Trump 2016 for the general. And some of them went back to, say, Biden in 20, but a lot of them, 3-time Trump voters now. And I think it's a combination of the articulation or prioritization of issues, even if sometimes the policies have not been as what they hoped, in a lot of cases. And some of it's also the style, kind of this like, you know what? We need big change. This is not a lot of things that some of the elements of free trade in the early 90s, which, Democrats, or President Clinton and President George H.W. Bush agreed on NAFTA. And as the years went on, it turns out, I think there were a lot of folks, particularly, on the bottom half of the economic scale, who have seen the jobs go away. And even if the net to the country has been increased, GDP doesn't pay your mortgage. GDP doesn't pay the rent or your kid's school or heating bill. And one of the things I tell my Democratic friends is when you see a candidate using macroeconomic language to describe why things are better. Hey, look, the national unemployment rate is low. Hey, look, the GDP, the stock market is going nuts, and these sort of macro things. But the problem is that none of us live in the macro world. We all live in the micro world. Our personal economy is everything, and there's been this gap that has created Bernie to Trump voting opportunities for millions of people, I think.
Well, yeah, look at the whole Rust Belt. I mean, you have a generation of people today that all that sounds great, but can't get a job to support themselves or their family and put food on the table and a roof over their head. Everybody wants to just be able to work, provide for themselves and their family, and retire with some dignity. And their parents could do it, their grandparents can do it, but they can't do it. That's all been left behind, and that's a real problem. And no one was talking to that. Bernie was talking to that. Trump was talking to that. And it also fascinates me a bit on certain labor issues to hear Bernie talk and then hear somebody like Josh Hawley talk. And my God, they almost sound like they're in stereo sometimes, especially over these NLRB nominees. I mean, so I'd like to think we all have more in common than not, but we just need to, and I think labor is a key thing that can bring the parties together to heal, because we've fallen into this trap where we keep referring to red states and blue states, and that's all true to a certain degree, but we are the United States, and I think we need to keep that forefront first in our thought process.
Labor does have this unique opportunity, I think, to be an intersecting point. You'll see, and of course, over time, we'll see how the policies represent or don't. But Hawley, senator from Missouri, I think second termer, generally seen as pretty conservative guy in what has become a pretty conservative state, has some of the most viral moments on social media. That if I did a silhouette and I hid and with a voice, recognizer, and we're like, okay, here's a senator, here's the transcript. Who was it? You might take a lot of guesses before you get to Josh Hawley of Missouri. He was talking, I saw him talking about Medicaid. And it seems like the healthcare space is another one of these areas where Democrats are, a lot of polling after the election showed that Democrats did not really have a trust advantage with American voters on a lot of the top tier issues like immigration, the economy, and so forth. But one place where they retained that advantage was healthcare. And now with the shutdown, it seems like, the Democrats have been fairly successful at getting folks to focus on healthcare's central role in all this. I mean, when you look at your membership, the issue of healthcare, that's got to be like a bullseye issue for what your members are thinking about, what they worry about.
Of course it is. And we were very fortunate in this last round of negotiations for the executive branch, the state employees, that there were no changes to healthcare. There were also no COLAs due to the current financial crisis the state's in. But the state also absorbed a 13% increase to those healthcare costs.
Wow.
Yeah. Think that actually is a huge win for the workforce and for hiring and retaining employees as well. And there were other good contract language changes in there as well. It was actually a successful round of.
That's a big one.
Even though there were no COLAs, which you deserve,
sure.
Still, to your point, it is successful.
With that said, if you look forward over the next several years, what do you think your membership generally? And I know it's a diverse set politically, the nature of work, everything. But what do you see? You go out 5 years. What's the next frontier, both of concerns, the things you want to make sure as a state and local and county government that we're not falling behind, where the trend lines maybe worry that you got to get ahead. And where do you think there's some opportunities as a membership to kind of play a leading role at a time when the state's kind of messy politically?
and this is where I'm going to disagree with our governor. I think the main thing is revenue.
Yep.
We need to have a serious and honest conversation about revenue. Cutting the interest and dividends tax, the business profits tax. Show me, give me the data where cutting those taxes have brought businesses into the state of New Hampshire. They can't because they haven't.
Yep.
No business is going to come to New Hampshire because you haven't got a workforce that can support the business because the housing costs are through the roof. The energy costs are through the roof. Our education costs are through the roof. And our young folks are leaving the state to get education, and they're not coming back. We have the second oldest aged population in the nation behind Maine, right next door.
Yep.
We need to have a serious conversation. And quite honestly, there's two thought processes in that legislature. There's the thought that there's a revenue problem, which there is, or that there's a spending problem. And I can honestly tell you, we are as lean as we possibly can be, Steve. There's nothing left.
When I got to tell you, so I used to audit cities and state governments for a living, and I used to, because I was very young and I was a mayor at a young age, and so I was this unique combination of an elected official who also was an auditor. So I would get to speak I'd get to keynote these national events. So I'd be like, at a room in Vegas, giving this speech, and you could hear the slot machines right outside the door. Like it was a funny thing, but yeah, other places, and it was city managers, town managers, sometimes elected officials. And I would give a speech, and I would start off by saying, here's my name. I'm from New Hampshire. I was born and raised. I live in New Hampshire. And then I would give remarks about a lot of wonky stuff. I'll take questions now. The first question would be, so great stuff. Did you say you're from New Hampshire? And I'd be like, yeah, that's not the point of the last half hour of remarks. And they'd say, oh, well, that's funny. We talk about New Hampshire all the time. It is the ultimate outlier in all of these different ways. You can pick the reddest states in America. It's not a partisan statement. You can pick kind of Bible Belt, deep South, like a Mississippi, Louisiana. You can pick more of like the libertarian Mountain West, like a Utah or an Idaho. These are the reddest states in America, Wyoming. And they go, wait a second. You spend how little money? So you don't have income tax. All right. Okay. No sales tax. All right. Although we do. It's just what you buy. I mean, it's funny. And they're like, you must have outrageous property taxes. I'm like, that is accurate. We do. And they're like, so what do you do? Because there's no money for certain things. And you're like, well, like, for example, I'm like, there's a lot of things that we basically have farmed out as a volunteer type thing. And I try not to get into it because I'm not there to talk about New Hampshire, right? I'm there to talk about best practices. And it's, the irony to me is it's often the folks from the reddest states that find this to be the most unusual way to try to run a state government that's actually sneaky inefficient, that there's ways that you could deliver better outcomes for not significantly more money, but significantly better outcomes. But we're always in this reactive mode in budget, back of the budget cuts. Here's less money. We're not going to tell you how to get there. But when it comes time, you're going to have to, often in a reactive way and sometimes draconian way, you're going to have to go find $5 million here or $10 million there. It's just bad budgeting. It's bad governance. And it feels like you're saving money on the front end, but you're not saving money in the long run. And you're definitely destroying the quality of the services on the long run. And what it's doing for the workforce, when I see an unemployment rate in the twos, it sounds amazing, right? You're like, great, but then typically that's actually as much a reflection of the lack of people around to take a job as it is to the abundance of jobs available to take. Most economists will tell you that a 2% unemployment rate is actually a mixed blessing because it tells you that you're lacking a workforce to take jobs that are staying open for a long time. This is not planful. It's 200 years in the making, and it's very reactive. And yet, I feel like, as a Democrat, I'm not sure that we have developed a message kind of a positive alternative message to juxtapose against that, that doesn't just get swatted down as, see, you guys are just all about taxes and spending. And then it's a defensive mode, and then the circle keeps turning. But you guys are in a position, your union, you probably get hit with this more directly than just about any cohort in the state. You're seeing it every day.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't like to use the term taxes because I'm a taxpayer.
Sure.
I'm a homeowner, so I pay through the nose to live in this state. But we have a revenue problem, and all I'm saying is we need to have a conversation about that, and then we need to come up with some innovative ideas where we're not increasing that tax burden, but changing it in such a way that it provides the resources necessary to fund our schools and to fund public government in such a way that we can provide for our citizens in a clear and effective way. Because we're at the breaking point on that. Our elderly are seeing that, feeling that. Our children in schools are seeing that. Hell, just not on the major highways, because if you go up and down 93, we've got those lovely rest areas.
Sure.
But if you go east or west on Route 9 or 101, and it's embarrassing. You go to Vermont, you go to Maine, they have beautiful, clean, stocked rest areas. There's for sale signs of what used to be rest stops.
Right.
It's a joke.
So it's the culture that I think there's a hope that if you just go without long enough, again, I think these days we see it more in the way that the education funding is over a decade. Now we're talking decades, and folks kind of get used to things being a certain way, but it's a dysfunctional way. But you get used to dysfunction, and so all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess everybody does it that way, and that's where I would invite legislators or town and city managers, often the ones that know this better than anybody, to go to these national events and watch not the bright blue states, that's you'll hear it there, but the ruby red states. And that gets back to we're the United States of America. Good governance doesn't have a color of party affiliation. There's best practices that value public employees as an investment towards making a state the best place, it could be, and what the goal should be the best state in America to start and raise your family, start and grow a business, to live in a safe way, to feel confident about your future, to be able to afford a place to stay. These are building block kind of things, and I think we've numbed our citizenry a little bit to you can't do that. But in most of the country, not most, in many places, we've shown there's good governance that allows you to do these things, and these days it feels like it's education where we're seeing the brunt of it. But like a frog is slowly warming water, we're seeing this across state government. I mean, again, you are probably uniquely qualified to see the different ways that on a day-to-day basis, Joe Dude here doesn't see it, but you do.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, or the problem, maybe not part of the problem, is the polarization that we're in right now. There's an author, Robert Putnam,
Sure,
wrote a great book, Bowling Alone, which I like, and he recently held a symposium. He lives in Jaffrey, and I went and saw him, and it was actually very interesting. He had some. He's a data geek, and he had several slides that showed the polarization in the United States in the late 1890s to 2015, and it basically went like this. And he said it even went farther down if you took it to 2025 today. And during the 20s, 30s, and it peaked in 1964, where regardless of what party was in power, we worked together to accomplish great things. The Civil Rights Act, Medicaid, etc. Right? FDR, the New Deal, in the 30s. The other thing that I did not know that he had mentioned in the early 1900s, high schools were not a thing in this country, but yet within 20 years, just about every community had one. How did that start? Was his question, and what can we learn from that generation that helped bring us together, and how can we do that today? And he talked about he thinks it rests and lies within the youth and activism, and I don't necessarily disagree with him, but until we solve that polarization problem and really stop attacking each other and listening to one another, because what all we're doing now is a lot of times what I see, to your point, is people are talking to like-minded people in their own circles. And I'll give you an example of that. We're starting to meet with different candidates running for Congress and Senate, and I'm not going to mention the person's name, but one of my favorite questions to ask, and for you future candidates coming in, you can prepare for this. Okay, you're elected to, let's say, the Senate. Who's going to be your go-to on the opposite side of the aisle to work with?
Yep.
One candidate said, I hadn't given that a thought. That's
problematic. That's telling.
Right. That tells me how polarized we are. So you're going to go to Congress and just hope for a massive blue wave and get everything that it's never going to be that way. We've got to work with each other and compromise. And that's what a union does, right? We go to the bargaining table, we bargain, we don't, it's a long game, it's a chess. We don't get everything we want. We compromise. We give a little, we take, Well,
that's interesting. I mean, part of what I think gives labor in general, SEA in particular here in New Hampshire, this unique opportunity, this unique place, is your membership is not polarized like that, right? You described earlier this very diffused political membership, and because of the nature of what you need to collaborate with whoever's in charge. You don't have a choice.
We're the last greatest democracy. We're a big tent.
Yeah.
I got everybody in this tent. I have Republicans. I have Democrats. I have progressives. I have free staters.
Yep.
I've got, you name it. And, but we work together civilly. We can agree to disagree. But the common thread that keeps us together is we all want to be productive, provide for our families, and have a roof over our head with decent benefits.
Which sounds like as I say, that's what the voters in 2024. Now we can talk about whether or not Donald Trump is going to be able to provide that, if he's been delivering that in the last 10 months, and that obviously I have a strong opinion about that. But clearly on election day, we saw in the exit polling, we saw it in the results. Americans felt like Trump, and by extension other Republicans, were at least talking about the issues that they were most worried about, and you just listed them, in a more effective way than Vice President Harris and the Democratic brand did. And right now, I think we're in this midst where the polling shows a lot of those voters have said, I'm not terribly satisfied with the production on those issues that the Trump administration has done. But hey, Democrats, I'm open for business, but what are you proposing? What are you going to do? Which is this nuance extra. It's not just a critique of, Trump sucks. It's that next layer and says, and you give us a chance, and here's what we will work to deliver. That's that extra part that I think the party is still trying to figure out right now. One of the things that we learn a lot about in the work that I do is for folks that are not that political, and clearly you have a lot of members who don't think a lot about because they're like everybody, right?
Yeah.
Is the worst thing a political junkie can do to try to engage a non-politically engaged person is to go up with a spreadsheet and a 7-point plan of politics, and instead to hang out with folks about anything but politics. Go to what they enjoy doing. So one of the things, and I'll close in a moment, but I always love spending time with folks that are in the middle of our political and civic world like you. So like when you're not thinking about politics, when you're not thinking about policy, what do you do for fun? You kind of alluded at the very beginning to some of the stuff that you like to do. You mentioned drumming.
Yeah.
So talk about where did that come from? How were you a kid?
Yeah. No, I was in high school. I fell in love with the Beatles.
Okay.
I wanted to learn how to play the drums, so I went down to the music teacher. I wasn't taking music at the time. Started taking some lessons and snowballed from there. I've been playing in bands all my life. Blues, rock, country, you name it. I just loved. And So I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And when I was really young, my grandmother used to take me to Radio City Music Hall. She liked to see the Rockettes play,
Okay.
and they would have open rehearsals in the afternoon. And she would bring me there, and I have memories of this. And we moved to New Hampshire when I was 5, so I'm young. Right?
Okay.
So I would always run down to the front because the orchestra was in a pit and it would raise up like this, and then and I'd always beeline for the drum section. So yeah, there's that. But I think most lately, I'm watching the Patriots again.
It's a good thing again.
It's a great thing again. Have some friends over and kick back and enjoy the wins.
I have to say, so my wife is from the Kansas City area, and I'm a lifelong New Hampshire guy who's a sports nut. And so I've been a Patriots fan. I'm 51, so I've been a Patriots fan since the early 80s.
Yep.
And of course, those were not great times. There were a few times in there. Got to a couple Super Bowls, didn't win them, but tough times in there. I call it the Rod Rust era, which was 1 year. We went, I think, 1-15, and it was we had scandals. It was awful. So my kids were born in 03 and 05.
Okay.
So all they know is Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Super Bowl every other year, all this stuff. So
rotten.
Oh my God, that's all they know. And same thing with the Red Sox. Like yesterday was we're recording this on a Thursday. Yesterday was the 50th anniversary of Carlton Fisk hitting the home run in 1975 that went off the foul pole to send it to a Game 7.
Okay.
And one of my first memories as a kid, I was only 1 when that happened, so I don't remember. I was around, but I don't remember it. The Boston public television station, and this was before cable and stuff, so you got a handful of channels. And every year on the anniversary of that game, so this is probably like 79, I'm probably 4 years old when I first remember this, they would play the broadcast. They got permission to play the broadcast from NBC, starting at the same moment that the game started. So it was like a 4.5-hour game. So the game ends after 12:30 in the real time. And as a little kid, I fell in love with it, and they let my parents, and I thank them, I'm still grateful, they let me stay up for it, which was really late for a little kid.
Sure.
And they would go to bed, and then they would peek, and I was still watching, and I knew I knew the result, but I didn't know, right? And then Fisk hits a home run off the foul pole, and Fisk is a New Hampshire kid from, I think, Charlestown, New Hampshire, and he went to UNH. I mean, for a little kid who loves baseball from New Hampshire, Carlton Fisk was everything. And the New Hampshire kid took the hometown team to the precipice. But of course, back then we lost the next day, so no World Series. My kids, all they know is Red Sox. There's no Bucky Dent, there's no Bill Buckner. There's just World Series. And so then, just as the team falls off, the Kansas City Chiefs come up. And now my wife's favorite team.
Oh.
So now my kids are like, well, Dad's team isn't winning the Super Bowl every year. Mom's team is winning. And she's a football nut now. How lucky am I? She's cute. She's smart. She's wonderful. And she's a huge football fan. I'm in Nirvana.
Smart to get that in on air.
Yeah, right on. Anniversary coming up, 24th anniversary. And now we watch football all the time. So now my wife, Sandy, is like, you know what? You guys had your 20 years. So now we get I don't know about 20 years, but we get our 10 years. I mean, they got the guy, Mahomes. Now all of a sudden, we got the guy.
Yeah, we do.
She's like, wait a second. So you suck for 5 years. You get the greatest run in the history of, football, certainly. And now you're supposed to suck forever. This is it.
Right.
And she's like, now you have the guy. You guys look like you're really good again. This is not fair. So I'm like, well, now what's delicious is the idea that the Chiefs and the Patriots could legitimately meet in the playoffs in a really important game. This is going to be the test.
But fortunately, my wife is a Patriots fan.
Oh my God!
I have that dynamic, so I wish you the best of luck with that.
I mean, I'm like, we have the 6 rings, so and we got to go to a Chiefs game a few weeks ago, the friend of a friend kind of thing. Awesome game. Detroit Sunday Night Football, great. It was amazing experience. And she's like, you got to cheer, you got to cheer for the Chiefs and we get the tickets. And I'm like, how about this? I will not cheer for Detroit. And that was pretty good. And, a good play old clap. But like now we're reaching potential Armageddon that I did not anticipate happening. I did not think we'd be this good again.
No, I didn't either. It's amazing. It's so fun.
It's amazing. Last thing. So we were talking before we started recording. You're a snowmobile guy.
Yeah.
So not that many opportunities in recent years, right?
No, global warming has definitely had an impact on that. But yeah, I've been snowmobiling since I was 12, 13 years old. Absolutely love it.
When you were younger and you were snowmobiling, where did you snowmobile? Southern New Hampshire or north? Or?
Southern New Hampshire, right from my house.
Yeah.
I lived with trails across the street and could go just about anywhere.
Where were you living?
Hillsborough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so pretty rural.
Yeah.
You get out there.
Yeah.
We lived in Manchester. We would, most of our family was up in Quebec still. My folks are immigrants in Quebec. So we would go up north and, some of my favorite memories are snowmobiling. I want to take the family out again. Yeah. I realize how few folks that if you're not from around here, you probably haven't really been snowmobiling. I think it's one of the best feelings.
Oh, it's awesome.
It is awesome. I've been able to take a presidential candidate or two out snowmobiling. And I'm like, listen, you want to win the New Hampshire primary? Now, do I have any evidence that this actually helps? I do not. But is it an excuse to go snowmobiling? Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I can remember as a kid after Star Wars came out, if it was snowing at night,
yes,
down a trail, I felt like I was in an X-Men.
Oh my God, that's the best. Now you're talking. You're hitting the bullseye. Well, I think, and I remind my Democratic friends that are watching that some of the most enjoyable times you're going to have connecting with people that maybe aren't coming to your local Democratic committee meeting every third Tuesday of the month or whatever. Is don't do politics. It's actually probably good for your mental health once in a while to step away, and it could be football, it could be snowmobiling, it could be garden. I don't care what it is, as long as it's you, right? As long as it's what you enjoy, hanging out with people who enjoy doing it too. You're going to make friends, you're going to build relationships, and they might even ask you what your political thoughts are down the road.
True.
Play the long game on that. But anyway, well, Rich, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for being so hospitable, letting us in here today.
No,
we'll have you back, and as we get deeper into 2026, it's going to be a fascinating political year.
Yeah.
And you and your membership, and I think the broader labor movement, is going to be right in the middle of the action. I think you're a critical part of the future of New Hampshire. And the labor movement, and I hope Democrats are understanding this, and my lifelong party are understanding how important labor is to the future of the Democratic Party and the success of the country. And appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Rich, thanks. Thank you all for listening and or watching, and we will see you again very soon.